The roar of a chainsaw sliced through the morning stillness, a jagged scream that yanked John Parker from his coffee. The mug slipping from his hand to shatter on the weathered porch of his Texas ranch house. He froze, heart pounding like a war drum, the bitter taste of the brew still on his tongue as the sound echoed across his 200-acre spread. It came from the east fence, his boundary, his lifeline, and it wasn't the wind or a fallen branch. Someone was cutting into his land, carving through the fragile peace he'd fought to hold after storms, poachers, and family betrayals. He bolted inside, grabbing his rifle from the wall, its weight a soldier's comfort against the burns still throbbing in his forearm from Mary Ellen's barn fire. Out here, trouble didn't knock. It roared, and John wasn't about to let it take what was his. He stormed to the barn, the cool March air biting his lungs, the lake glinting gold under a rising sun that mocked the chaos below. Dusty, his chestnut mare, nickered as he threw the saddle over her back, her ears twitching at the distant buzz. "Easy, girl," he muttered, tightening the girth, his voice rough from a sleepless night haunted by the court order his kids had wielded like a blade. He mounted, spurs jingling, and spurred her toward the noise. The horizon, streaked with the promise of a clear day, turned sour. The chainsaw's growl grew louder, a mechanical beast gnashing at his fence, and as he crested a low hill, the sight hit him like a punch. 3 men in hard hats, one slicing a post with a buzzing blade, the others hauling wire into a rusted truck. Beyond them stood Old Man Wheeler, cane planted in the dirt, his grizzled face split by a triumphant sneer. Caleb Wheeler lounged nearby, smirking, a cigarette dangling from his lips, the ember glowing like a taunt. John reined Dusty in, dismounting with a heavy thud, his boots sinking into the soft earth still damp from the storm. He slung the rifle over his shoulder, its barrel catching the sun, and strode forward, his limp barely slowing him. "What in blazes do you think you're doing?" he barked, voice cutting through the din like a whip crack, his brown eyes blazing under the brim of his Stetson. Wheeler stepped closer, his limp slow and deliberate, a predator savoring the hunt, his gray eyes glinting with cold certainty. "Surveyin'. Parker, my buyer's movin', lakefront's prime, and this stretch is ours now. Court says so." John's blood ran cold, his hand tightening on the rifle strap until his knuckles whitened. "Court? This is my land, deeds in my name, and you know it." Caleb laughed, a sharp, grating sound, flicking ash into the grass near John's boots. "Not anymore, old man. Check your mail. Judge ruled yesterday. You're squatting on our property now." The words slammed into John, his mind racing back to the legal notice from his kids. Jake, Sarah, Matt, the deed's flaw. Linda's ghost on the title. Had they sold out to Wheeler? He took a step forward, towering over the old man, his shadow stretching long across the trampled grass. "You're lying. Get your crew off my ranch. Now, or I'll make you." Wheeler's lip curled, a thin, venomous smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Papers don't lie, Parker. Boys, keep cutting." The chainsaw rev again, its blade biting deeper into the post, and John snapped, lunging forward. He grabbed the operator's arm, wrenching the tool free with a soldier's strength honed in jungles decades past. The chainsaw clattered to the ground, its blade spinning silent in the dirt, and the crew froze, their hard hats tilting as they glanced between John and Wheeler, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. Caleb moved fast, fist swinging wild, but John sidestepped, his reflexes sharp despite the years. He shoved Caleb back, hard, the younger man sprawling into the mud with a curse. "Stay down," John growled, turning to Wheeler, his voice low and dangerous. "Call him off, or I will." Wheeler tapped his cane, unfazed, his voice rasping like dry leaves. "You down, Parker? Fight all you want, law's on our side, and your kids handed it to us." He signaled the crew with a flick of his wrist, and they retreated to the truck, Caleb scrambling up, spitting dirt and venom as they climbed in. The engine roared, tires spinning gravel, and they peeled off, leaving a cloud of dust and the ruined fence, a jagged wound in John's land. He stood there, breathing hard, the cut post leaning like a broken soldier, wire dangling uselessly. He kicked the chainsaw aside, its metal glinting in the sun, and mounted Dusty, riding back slow, the lake's calm surface mocking the storm in his chest. At the house, he stormed inside, the screen door banging shut, and rifled through the mail piled on the kitchen table. Bills, feed orders, junk, until he found it. A thick envelope, stamped with a court seal, unopened from yesterday's chaos. He tore it open, hands trembling, and scanned the words. Preliminary ruling. Parker Ranch. Partial title transfer to Wheeler Enterprises, pending final hearing. His stomach dropped, the paper crumpling in his fist. His kids' names were there, claimants, not owners. Wheeler's lawyer twisting their dispute into a sale. He slammed the document down, the table shuddering, and grabbed his phone, dialing Jake. No answer, just the cold hum of voicemail. Sarah, Matt, nothing but silence. He sank into a chair, the deeds drawer staring back from across the room, its proof mocked by this legal knife. The sun climbed high, baking the mud outside. As he saddled Dusty again, needing air, needing answers, he rode to the lake, the water lapping at swollen banks, and dismounted, letting the mare graze as he sat on a rock. The court order heavy in his pocket. The land stretched wide, pastures gold with spring grass, cattle grazing slow, the barn's patched roof a testament to his grit. He'd built this after Linda left, poured every dime and drop of himself into it, and now it was slipping through his fingers. A rustle broke his thoughts, hoofbeats steady and sure. Mary Ellen Carter rode up on her gray mare, a thermos swinging from her saddle, her braid loose from the wind, her face etched with the quiet strength he'd come to lean on. She dismounted, tethering her horse beside Dusty, and climbed the bank, her boots crunching gravel. "You look like a man carrying the world, John," she said, handing him the thermos, hot coffee, its steam curling in the cool air. "What's happened?" He took it, the warmth steadying his hands, and spilled the story. Wheeler's crew, the chainsaw, the court's ruling, his kids' names on the paper. His voice rose, raw and ragged. As he paced the shore, the lake's ripples mirroring his unrest. "They've teamed up. Jake, Sarah, Matt, sold me out to that snake. Wheeler's claiming the east stretch, says it's his now." Mary Ellen listened, sipping her own coffee, her blue eyes darkening with each word. She set the mug down on a flat stone, her voice firm but soft. "They're scared. John, scared you'll lose it all to rustlers' floods time. But Wheeler's playing dirty, twisting their fight into his gain. You need a lawyer, today, not tomorrow." He nodded, wiping sweat from his brow with a sleeve still stiff with mud. "Got one in town, meeting him at noon. But this," he gestured to the horizon, his land under siege, the east fence a distant scar. "This I can't wait for. They're coming back, Mary Ellen. I feel it." She stepped closer, gripping his shoulder, her touch a lifeline through the storm in his head. "You're not alone in this. We'll fight it together. Wheeler don't scare me, and he shouldn't scare you." Her words hung there, a quiet vow, and he met her gaze, the tension between them shifting, something unspoken since the fire's kiss, now a steady flame he couldn't ignore. "Thanks," he said, voice low, and she nodded, mounting her mare. "Ride safe," she called, heading back, leaving him with coffee and a flicker of hope. He finished the thermos, the sun beating down, and rode to the east fence, inspecting the damage. 3-post cut, wire coiled in the grass like a snake. He dismounted, grabbing a hammer and spare wire from Dusty's saddlebag, and set to work, pounding posts into the earth, the rhythm steadying his pulse. Sweat soaked his shirt, the burn on his arms stinging with each swing, but he kept going, the fence rising slow under his hands. Hoofbeats sounded again. Tom Carter, Mary Ellen's son, riding up fast. His broad frame tense, but sober, a coil of wire slung over his shoulder. "Parker," Tom called, reining in his bay gelding. "Ma told me. Wheeler's crew hit our fence too, south side. I'm in. Let's fix this." John studied him, the memory of Tom's drunken swing fading against this new resolve. "Good," he said, tossing him a hammer. "Need every hand. Start there, post loose." They worked side by side, hammers ringing, the sun climbing higher, a silent pact forged in shared dirt and defiance. Dusk painted the lake orange, the air cooling as John rode back, Tom trailing to check his own land. He tethered Dusty, stepping onto the porch, when headlights flared, Jake's sleek black pickup, Sarah and Matt climbing out, their faces grim but not hostile. John met them, rifle in hand, the court order crumpled in his pocket, his voice low and edged. "What's this?" "Come to gloat." Jake stepped forward, hands raised, his city boots scuffing the gravel. "Not us, Dad. We didn't sell." Wheeler's lawyer twisted it, said we agreed. "We didn't sign a thing." Sarah's eyes softened, her arms crossed tight. "We're fighting it too. Court's next week." Matt found a loophole in the filing. Matt, the youngest, shifted, his banker's polish dulled by dust. Linda's name's on the deed, but the divorce decree's incomplete, missing a page. "We're digging through Mom's old files in Houston tomorrow." John's chest eased, suspicion melting into cautious hope, though the sting lingered. "Why the silence?" "Left me hanging." Jake's jaw clenched, his voice tight. "Didn't know till this morning. Wheeler's fast, too fast. We drove straight here." John waved them in, the screen door creaking, and poured coffee from Mary Ellen's thermos, the kitchen dim under a single bulb. "Fences down," he said, setting mugs on the table. "Wheeler's moving in tomorrow. Crew'll be back. Help me hold it." Jake nodded, sipping slow. "We're in. Not losing this place. Not yet." Sarah leaned forward, her voice steady. "We'll fix the legal mess, Dad. But we need you to trust us." Matt added, quiet but firm, "Work first, court later." They stayed, a fragile truce forming. And night fell with a plan. Jake on watch with a shotgun, Sarah and Matt prepping wire and post from the barn. John rode out with Tom at midnight, the lake a dark mirror under a waxing moon. And they rebuilt the fence by lantern light, hammers ringing against the silence. Sweat soaked their shirts, the air thick with resolve, the line rising post by post, a barrier against Wheeler's greed. Headlights flared at 1 a.m. Wheeler's beat-up truck, Caleb at the wheel, a crew of 5 spilling out with tools and menace. John stepped forward, rifle raised, Tom at his side, hammer in hand. "Back off," John barked, voice steel over the cricket's hum. "This is my land, court or no court." Caleb smirked, revving the engine, his cigarette glowing. "Step aside, old man. We've got rights. Judge says so." Jake emerged from the shadows, shotgun leveled, Sarah and Matt flanking him with wire cutters and a crowbar raised. "Not tonight," Jake said, voice hard as flint. "Move, or we make you." Wheeler climbed out, cane tapping the ground, his gray eyes narrowing at the united front. John, his kids, Tom, a wall of defiance. "You'll lose," he rasped, his voice cutting through the night. "This ain't over. Not by a long shot." He signaled retreat, the crew piling back, Caleb spitting into the dirt as they peeled off, taillights fading into the dark. John lowered his rifle, breathing hard, the fence standing tall for now. Back at the house, his kids crashed on the couch, Tom on the porch with a blanket, exhaustion claiming them all. Mary Ellen arrived at dawn, coffee in hand, her gray mare tethered nearby, her smile weary but proud as she climbed the steps. "Held the line," she said, sitting beside him, the lake glowing soft in the early light. "Barely," he muttered, the court order heavy in his pocket, his hand brushing hers as he took a mug. The fence was up, Wheeler pushed back. His kids at his side, but the legal war loomed, a missing page holding his fate. Across the lake, a figure watched, binoculars glinting in the sunrise, then vanished into the trees. John gripped the mug tighter, the rifle close, his voice low. "They'll be back, and I'll be ready."